back. Well, I was very much full of doom and gloom at the prospect of what might unfold last night as the Aston Villa versus Maccabi Tel Aviv match got underway with all of those protests. Now, I am relieved to say that despite the ugliness of the optics, and it still leaves a sort of ominous portent in my heart about the fact that essentially a noisy rabble of anti-Semites were trying to impose apartheid in Birmingham. In fact, frankly, they were successful, weren't they, given that Israeli fans were not allowed in, and they managed to flood the city with posters saying things like boot Zionists out. I mean, it's really not good, is it? That little rabble-rouser, Mr. Ahmed Yaqub, didn't get the 300,000 protesters from across the country that he had hoped to achieve. And yet, at the very least, it was a huge waste of police time. And it goes to show that, frankly, the authorities are just not standing up to this blight. Let's speak now to Peter Bleksley, former Met Police detective. Peter, I am, like I said, relieved. There were still 11 arrests. It's not really detailed who they were, but we know that people were taken into custody for a variety of offences, including trying to throw fireworks into the ground, possessing Class B drugs and shouting racist abuse. But other than the sort of hooliganism, let's say, that people were nicked for me, the thing that was the most ghoulish was all of those men going out at night with balaclavas and putting messages up that, you know, read one way are just saying, wow, we don't want people who support Israel in this horrible war, genocide, nya, 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 nya. But really, the underlying message was, we don't want Jews here.
The football results are in. Anti-Semitic hate mob 1, tolerance and democracy 0. Welcome to Britain in 2025. But this whole scenario tells you the truth about policing and anti-Semitic, pro-Palestinian, call them what you want, mobsters in the UK. They are simply now too big to police, so they have to be placated. This is why Muslim Pakistani rape gangs were not properly investigated in Rotherham, in Rochdale, in Oldham, in Telford. They're too big. There's too many of them, and the police are scared.
I mean, that in itself is harrowing. Because if you're saying they're too big now, one thing is for certain, those communities are only going to get larger. And clearly there are people within that community who have the audacity to believe that they now run Birmingham, that it is theirs, that our second city is now under their control. And you kind of have to ask yourself, what happens next? Because when this all began with Ayub Khan, the pro-Gaza MP, saying that he didn't want the fans coming over because apparently they're all hooligans and they would endanger the local community, which we all know is absolute hogwash. It then became, well, we don't want the team coming. It then became, we don't want Israel in FIFA. It then became, we don't want Israel in sport at all. And this all sort of accelerated in a matter of weeks because we said yes to their first demand. And you have to look at what went on. No one was told you can't put this up, you can't have these protests, take down those flags, take down those signs, go home, you don't run Birmingham. And so as far as I can tell, they're going to be emboldened. And I wonder, Peter, how long we have to wait until certain parts of Birmingham have their own, frankly, Islamic Guard who decide the rules that happen within what they demand as their territory.
It's gone way beyond that. It's not just people in the community. These people, some of them, are in Parliament. Yes, that's how far it's gone. And now, of course, because their demand to not have any away supporters was met, in essence, in other words, the police caved in, just like they have almost caved in to the protesters in London with their anti-Semitic chanting and their slogans and their banners and the such like. All this appeasement is doing is empowering this mob. The police they won't admit it to you and I and publicly, but clearly they think it's too big to police. So I'll use the word again, they placate, they appease, because they're too scared of a head-to-head clash, which I appreciate would be ugly and is probably better to avoid, but nonetheless, they're too big, there's too many of them, The police can't cope and they've rolled over.
What do you make of this other story in the Telegraph today? 90 violent or sex offenders have been mistakenly released from prison in the last year. That's almost 2 a week being let back out into society, who frankly should be kept locked up. I mean, as a former police detective, that must chill you to the bone, because the police have to jump through so many hurdles in order to make sure they secure a prosecution with all the right evidence and all the rest of it. That after all of that effort, if these people are just sort of let out because the prison officers can't seem to do their job, it's chilling.
If I had spent time dealing with a victim, dealing with witnesses, liaising with scenes of crime to get any forensics, putting all the evidential package together, sending it off to the CPS, ensuring that charges were brought forward, getting that person to court, seeing them convicted, only for them then to be mistakenly released from prison, I would be one very grumpy detective. Moreover, it's putting the public at risk. Clearly, the whole criminal justice system is in an absolute state of flux, and we need to get a grip. Let's stop putting idiots in charge. Let's put people in charge who are capable, who are committed, who know what they're doing, who have some experience, who know how to turn around an organisation of whatever size and shape it is. Not so many years ago, in fact, in 2024, Rolls-Royce turned around its complete fortunes because it was focused. It had the right people. It had a strategy. And Rolls-Royce is a business with a turnaround of about £18 billion a year. The Home Office has a budget of £20 billion a year. So not that far away from the size of turnover that Rolls-Royce enjoys. If we had the right, capable, clever, intellectual, committed people in charge who actually knew what they were doing, there is no reason why the criminal justice system could not be turned around in a similar kind of time frame.
No, I totally agree, and I think the first thing they need to do is abandon any form of wokery. Thank you ever so much. Gorgeous catching up with you, the astonishing Peter Bleksley.